Hi everyone, it's Julie here, and I thought I would do my April recap video. I am filming on the last day of April, and the rest of this week is gonna get pretty crazy, so let us jump right into it with decks. So my one deck that I spent a lot of time with over the month of April is the Moon Void Tarot by Stefanie Caponi, and this is my lovely Peggy bag. I did do a deck mod flip through video of this deck where I show you how I've added splashes of color because this is a black and white deck. And I also said in that video, which I will link if you are interested, that working with this deck was very introspective because I felt like in these cards, I felt like she was me. I felt like I was staring back at me. So we bonded very quickly and we had a very involved relationship over the month. So I feel as though she needs a bit of a breather, she needs a bit of a rest, and I'm sure I will still revisit her for Instagram posts and whatnot, but I am ready to move on to working with other decks. But this is a wonderful deck. You know, it's RWS based, and so it was just very easy, very intuitive for me. The other deck that I worked with is the Fairy Tarot. This is a Los Scarabeo deck, and this is the deck that I use to practice my Marseille. And these are scenic pips, but I would say that the images don't lend any meaning to the cards, and so I did not take the images in the pips into account when using this deck. And it's a charming deck. It was fun to work with. I really enjoyed my time with it and practicing Marseille. And this really is the only deck where I feel the pips are fairly neutral. I have Tarot of the Moon Garden, which is also scenic pips for many of the minors, and yet those cards still have nuances of RWS, which I feel might not make it so ideal for practicing Marseille, because, you know, with those kind of images that remind me of RWS, I feel like my mind will just automatically go there. And then I have, you know, the Star Tarot, which again, it's the same deal. Pip style, but influences of RWS within those cards as well. So I might just continue practicing with this deck. I have been looking here and there for another deck like this where I love the images overall and the scenic pips are fairly neutral. Because I'm not drawn to traditional Marseille decks, unfortunately. And I haven't really found another deck yet, and that's okay. This one will do fine. One is enough, and so I might just continue practicing with this one. For Lenormand, I used the 1889 Lenormand Oracle. A beautiful deck. Here are the backs with beautiful kind of muted shimmery gold gilding, and it was nice to dip my toes back into Lenormand and just to kind of refamiliarize myself with the aspects of Lenormand and trying to kind of figure out how I'm using these cards as opposed to tarot. So I think these images are beautiful. There's only a couple that I'm not crazy about. One is this one, the man. I mean, he's a perfectly okay looking guy. I just for some reason get like serial killer vibes from him. I like, you know, Christian Bale American Psycho vibes. So, and then the other one is The Cross. You can see the cross here in the background. I wish it were more prominent. I wish that were the main focal point of this card, but you know, I still recognize it immediately, so it's not the hugest deal. Moving on to books. I finished reading A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Brigid Kemmerer, and I feel like I talked a little bit about that in my depth year video, where I said, oh, I'm not sure if I'm gonna even be able to finish this in like, you know, a few weeks before the book is due back at the library, because it was pretty thick. And then I finished it in like 4 days because it was that good. It was that good. It's a retelling of the fairy tale Beauty and the Beast. I have been reading a lot of fairy tale retellings lately to kind of get my mind into that zone, because I'm working on my own manuscript, which is also a very loose fairy tale retelling. And so I just sped through that book. It was excellent. And it also just kind of made me feel like shit about myself, if I'm being completely honest, because I definitely fell into that comparison mode where it's like, wow, I mean, my manuscript doesn't even come close. Like, my manuscript is such a piece of shit compared to this book, which I know this is not a productive way of thinking. It does me no good to think like this, but I'm just being honest and transparent in that it kind of made me feel like not great for a while. Like, I loved it, and then at the same time I was like really dejected after reading it. It's like, oh my God, why do I even bother with my novel? But anyway, I'm back on track. I'm, you know, trying to let go of those comparison mode feelings, and I highly recommend that book. It's a first in a series. I didn't know it was going to be a series, and yeah, so I look forward to reading book 2 whenever that comes out. I also finished reading The Laughing Corpse by Laurell K. Hamilton. This is not my book. So my friend, she was a fan of these books. It's Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series, and so she lent me the first 3. I finished the first one sometime late last year, and it was pretty good. So basically it follows the protagonist, Anita Blake. She's a vampire hunter. She's also like an animator. So she raises the dead, you know, she deals with zombies, and so I've heard it compared to Buffy. And the first book was good. This is the second book, and I found that this one fell a little flat because while the first book focused a lot on vampires, which I am totally into vampires and vampire lore, this one focused more on zombies and, you know, this case that she's working on that involves this like crazy weird zombie. And so this one wasn't as interesting for me, but I mean, the ending was satisfying enough, but this was just okay. On audio, I started listening to Shadowsong by S. Jae-Jones, and this is a sequel to Wundersmith. It's kind of another fairy tale like series, where in the first book, Wundersmith, it's about this young woman named Liesel. Her sister has been kidnapped by the Goblin King, and so she has to go to the underworld to save her. And so it follows the relationship between Liesel and the Goblin King. And so this sequel I've been listening to on audio, and I gotta admit, I'm pretty bored. I'm on chapter 9 of 32, and I'm just so bored. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna keep listening to it. I mean, I feel like I should give it at least a few more chapters, but we'll see. It's been a little bit disappointing because the first one I felt was pretty entertaining. It was just so well written, and this one kind of falls short for me. So we'll see. Movies and TV. The only movie I watched, I think, in April is Venom, the Marvel movie with Tom Hardy and Michelle Williams. If you loved this movie, you might want to fast forward a few minutes while I talk about how much I hated this movie. Sorry. This was 2 hours of my life that I will never get back, and so I'm pretty resentful about that. This, you know, as part of our, we have a few movie channels as part of our cable package, and so this was free. So Matt and I decided, you know, why not? Like, the critics panned it, but the fans seemed to love it. And, you know, I take, you know, critic reviews, you know, I take them at a very loose value. You know what I mean? Like, I don't put too much stock into them, especially if fans seem to really enjoy the movie. But for this one, I gotta say the critics got it right, that it was like just not good. It was not good. Poor character development, some cheesy dialogue, bad editing. It was just kind of boring. Sometimes Matt and I would laugh, and I think there were scenes that were supposed to be humorous, but then we found ourselves laughing at parts that were just, I think, not supposed to be humorous because, like, the dialogue was that bad. I think we got halfway through, and then I was like, I told Matt, I said, can we just fast forward to the end? Because I you know, want to see the end. I just want to see kind of like what happens at the end. So we basically fast forwarded the rest of the movie and just caught the ending. So for TV shows, the final season of Game of Thrones started. I have a very complicated relationship with Game of Thrones. I have thought about quitting that show a number of times because it's a stressful show for me. I'm very sensitive, and it is just all out stressful. And yet, the characters are so amazing. The storyline is so enthralling and amazing. I just haven't been able to quit the show because they have you hooked. They really do. Like, each episode has you wondering what the next episode is going to bring. And so I gotta finish it. Of course I'm gonna watch this final season. And I know some people are going to think it's blasphemous for me to say this, but I am glad the show is ending. Like, I'm done. Like, I think it's a good time to end the show, end it on a high note instead of it carrying on for how many more seasons where it just, you know, everything falls flat and it's not so great anymore. It's you know, going out with what appears to be good quality episodes so far. We're into 3 episodes, I believe. So it's been good, and I'm ready for it to be done. And then to lighten the load and the stress levels of Game of Thrones, I've started watching A Discovery of Witches. That has just started showing for free on like a BBC network channel that I get. And so I thought, why not? You know, this looks like it'll be just some mindless fun. And it's based on a book series by Deborah Harkness. I read the first book years ago and when it came out, and I remember enjoying it. I also remember thinking it was kind of long, and towards the end I was like, okay, let's hurry it up, let's be done. And then I didn't read the sequels because I just didn't feel like it. And I don't remember that first book at all. I don't remember what happened. So vague pieces, but you know, this series, I've only seen 2 episodes so far, and it's not bad. It's just fun, you know. It's Matthew Good. I love Matthew Good. He's nice to look at, so we'll see how the rest of the series goes. For May, tarot-wise, I will be working with the Star Tarot. I've mentioned before that I got this in a deck trade, and I have since modified the deck. I've trimmed off the hideous borders and edged the deck in rainbow colors, and I did start reading the guidebook just a little bit, the introduction, and I plan on reading the entire guidebook for May and really learning this deck, and I'm pretty excited about it. I think this is a deck either you love or you hate. Some people think it's, you know, kind of visual vomit with just all the different symbology and the rainbows and all the different colors and different animals, but I love that about this deck. Another deck that I plan to work with is Tarot of a Moon Garden. Now, as I said earlier in this video, this is a deck that is, you know, kind of scenic pip style, but still influenced by RWS. So here's an example, 4 of Pentacles. So, you know, you see a figure here. But then here is 7 of Swords, which is more kind of pippish, scenic pippish. So I'm not sure that this will really work in terms of practicing Marseille. And I know that this is another deck that's a bit polarizing. People either love it or they don't. I know that people have super strong visceral feelings about these borders, which they don't bother me as much. I mean, if they created this deck and revised it so that it was, you know, without these borders and the images were crisper, absolutely. I wouldn't be mad about it at all, but I don't mind the border so much. It's supposed to be like looking through a portal, right? Looking through a portal and into this kind of moonlit, hazed, filled world, you know, this moon garden. This has a bit of sentimental value to me because last year for my birthday, Matt and I visited this witchy store that we'd never been to before, and I wanted to get a tarot deck, and I told him to pick out a deck for me, and this is the deck he picked out. And so I'll probably hang on to this deck, even though if I come to find that it's not a good reader, I'll probably still keep it. And then for Lenormand, I will be using the Gilded Reverie by Ciro Marchetti. Another pretty deck. And I love this child card because it's very kind of androgynous. Like it could be a boy, it could be a girl. So I love this one. Really love these images. This is the expanded version, so there are a lot of extras, but I am going to hold off on incorporating those extras until, again, I just kind of feel more comfortable with Lenormand and feel like it's more of an easygoing experience. But yeah, here are all the extras. And we have an extra, these are the extra man and woman, which I can't even with these, so I'm using the other ones. For books, I have started reading the 3rd book in the Anita Blake series, Circus of the Damned. This one is going a little bit better because, again, the focus is back on vampires, which is more my thing. I'm just not really interested in zombies. I like zombie movies, I just don't like zombie fiction. So, and then after that one, I'm just going to return these books to my friend, and I think I'm probably going to, I mean, unless this 3rd one really hooks me, I think I'll probably take a break from this series. And then another book that I plan to start is Soulless by Gail Carriger. This is a first in a series as well, and this is a steampunk series. I have been wanting to read a steampunk novel for ages now, and I'm just getting around to it. This was a book that I saw on Giselle's channel, Mad Witch. It was a while back. She did a video where she mentioned this, and so I put this on my to read. So hopefully this will be a good time, and I don't know, it might inspire me to bring out my steampunk tarot deck, so that might be one that I'm called to use as well. And then for audio, I have downloaded Wundersmith, The Calling of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is a second in the series. I think in a previous video I did talk about reading the first one, which is Nevermore, The Trials of Morrigan Crow. And this is, it's a, I guess, a YA novel series that's very much in the style of Harry Potter. So I will be listening to that on audio, and then along with reading the Star Tarot guidebook, I've also started this, which is the Complete Lenormand Oracle Handbook by Caitlin Matthews. There's an accent on the second I, so I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but we'll see how much I get through of this. So far, I am loving it. The only other book, Lenormand book, that I've read is the Essential Lenormand by Rana George. That is the first ever Lenormand book that I used to start learning the system. That, along with just watching YouTube videos, Donna Lay and Kelly from The Truth and Story. While I liked Rana George's book, the focus was very much on fortune telling, which I don't use my decks for that. I don't have any judgment against fortune telling or predictive readings, but I'm just not a medium. I'm not a psychic, and that was never what the draw was for me in starting to use tarot and these kind of divination cards. What appeals to me about this book is that Caitlin Matthews talks about how she will go into using Lenormand as both a tool for divination and prediction. So I like that balance there, and I look forward to reading about the differences and how she would differentiate those two different styles of reading and using the Lenormand for that. So I think that's it for books. I'm pretty good on books this month, I feel. And then finally, this weekend, I will be traveling to Orlando to visit a friend of mine. I've mentioned her in a previous video where I discuss the Guardian Angels Tarot deck and how she kind of inadvertently inspired me to get that deck, and how our friendship has really been growing over her learning about oracle cards and really tapping into kind of the more woo witchy side of spirituality, because she grew up Catholic. And so this is that same friend, and she wanted me to attend a past life regression retreat with her. And that's what I will be doing on Sunday. I have never had a past life regression session before. I'm very curious about it. I've studied Buddhism in the past and Taoism, and so the whole idea of past lives, reincarnation, is something that I'm familiar with, and something that I'm curious about. And so I'm looking forward to this retreat. And watch, I will be the only one that gets no hits. Everybody else will have tapped into their past life and will have a bunch of wonderful details to convey after they've snapped out of their session, and then I'll be the only one that's like, nothing. I got nothing. That's me. That's usually my luck. But fingers crossed that I do have an enlightening experience. That is it for my April recap. I hope you all are doing well, and much love to you as we head into May.